welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for joining us. On this episode, we'll be joined by Bob Buster. He is a member of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors. We'll also be speaking with two people in education, Nathan Miller, who is running for the Riverside Community College District, as well as Ben Johnson, who is a trustee at the Alvord Unified School District. All three men will be speaking about Proposition 30, which is the governor's tax initiative. As you know, Proposition 30 would dedicate some funding to realignment. That is money that would go to the counties that will allow them to house prisoners that would have gone to state prison but are now going to county jails. What's your sense of Prop 30 and how arguably important is it to counties?
Well, we're already getting funding from the state for this realignment effort, so I'm really not looking at Prop 30 from that standpoint. I'm concerned about some of the taxing aspects of Prop 30 and the fact that the state really hasn't done the pension reform. It's done a little bit now, but it needs to do more of that. And what the state is going to do to make sure that they don't keep finding $54 million in various accounts. As they
did in the park department.
And a more straightforward approach to the bullet train, which looks like is a bottomless hole here of funds.
Well, let's focus then on realignment and its impact on the 58 counties in our state. Some counties have enough beds. Los Angeles County, for example, miraculously has enough beds. Riverside County faces challenges.
Yeah, we don't. You know, it's the U.S. Supreme Court that ruled just last year, 2011, that the state's conditions in their state prisons were unconstitutional.
Cruel and unusual under the Eighth Amendment.
So the governor and the state legislature, a way of primarily solving this problem was not to build new prisons because they know they can't get the taxes for it.
Or do it quickly enough pursuant to the Supreme Court order.
Correct. But so one of their major ways of relieving overcrowding was to shift the problem onto the counties, some of which have room in their jails, some of which have programs to deal with these low-level offenders that they are shifting over to county. And that's what's happening.
And what's interesting is Riverside County faces a similar challenge from the court, as does California, because in 1993, a federal court ordered Riverside to relieve its crowding in its state jails. So you're at some level between a rock and a hard place.
You know, we are, and we've continued to be. Now, we did have space. We had built 600 new beds out in the Banning area. Those were open. We're able to tear down a very old, antiquated jail. So we maybe netted out almost 300 new jail beds, but those were almost filled. And then we had the state legislature and the governor shifting these so-called low-level felons over to county oversight and into our jails and into our probation's control.
But one could argue there is some good news, because in March of this year, the state did award Riverside County specifically, I believe it's $100 million, to deal with its jails. Tell me about that grant.
Well, that will help long term. Obviously, we'll need that and more. Jail beds are very expensive, not only to build, but particularly to operate. So that will help us probably 4 and 5 years out. But we're scrambling around now to put together our sheriff. And when I mean we have a committee of our sheriff, our district attorney, public defender, mental health department, probation heads up the committee, and one of the police chiefs to try to sort out what are the short and longer term issues that we need to address. But we're actually hiring personnel now. It's been a job.
I've spoken with Stan Sniff, who is the sheriff, and I think you can go to joinrsd.com or org because they are hiring.
That's right. They're new probation, good jobs, by the way. And I think we can do a better job with our community programs to rehab, to retrain what the programs that we're doing by state parole. Our probation can do a better job at that.
And let's talk about that, because one of the desired benefits of realignment had been that because these lower level offenders would be serving time closer to home in their home counties, that there would be more opportunities for rehabilitation programs, which have been cut over the last several decades.
And we think, our county thinks that if the state funding for this program is sustained, that's a big question, but so far it's been adequate not only to save money for the state, but actually provides our county with more money per inmate or per probationer than we had before.
But that's where Prop 30 would come into play, because if it passes, there will be dedicated funds for the counties.
We're going to be asking more funds from existing accounts of the state, not just from Proposition 30, because we think we can do a more cost-effective job of not only housing prisoners or felons, these low-level felons that have not completed their sentence, but also those that are about ready to go out to the community, doing a better job of retraining them and rehabilitating them.
I know that your county is looking at some, let's call them innovative programs to try to ease overcrowding.
Right.
One of them is sending close to 300 jail inmates to fire camps. Tell us about that.
That's right. There are offenders, if they're in good health and if they're physically able, can really do a great job for us by helping to put out fires and prevent fires in the summertime. And there are fire camps here in the inland area in Riverside, San Bernardino counties that have bed space for that. So nonviolent offenders, non-sex offenders, the very
non-serious, right.
non-serious folks, if they don't have any serious health problems and they're physically able, could be assigned to these fire camps, which would free up jail beds for tougher cases.
And I'm wondering if that could be the beginning of a new career for some of these individuals. I mean, if they truly are low-level offenders,
that's right.
I would hope that the skills that they learn at these fire camps could put them on a different path.
Right. I mean, that's really the aim of the whole program here, is those that are able, those that can get their high school diploma, haven't gotten that, they can be trained in a variety of job skills where they can find jobs when they are finally released.
Another expense for counties and the state for that matter is incarceration prior to trial.
That's right.
And many folks have said, especially with these lower level offenders, why not release them on their own reconnaissance? You can create some type of monitoring system, and I believe the county is looking at that as well.
Yeah, before sentencing, about 60 to 65% of our jails are taken up with folks that have not yet gone to trial, have not been sentenced, who may be innocent.
And they can't make bail.
And they can't make bail. It's just an economic issue for them. So there are some of those that we could, again, free up jail space with more effective, very, very well done and secure programs out in the community, either by monitoring them electronically through these wrist or ankle bracelets and other probation programs. And we're strengthening those now. Those have been going on already. They need to be expanded and improved upon.
What about day reporting centers?
That is one of the things probation has right now. They'll be expanding that so that they can have one-stop shop for all the different kinds of services that a probationer needs to get back on their feet.
Now, I understand that Riverside is actually charging county prisoners for their time in jail.
That's right.
That's interesting.
That actually supplies part of the funding for many of these programs. Doesn't do all. I mean, we get a fee for the inmate use of telephones, for example.
But let's go back to charging someone for being in prison. Where are they going to get this money? I mean, look, I'm all for punishment, but it seems almost folly.
Well, I don't think we can rely on that as a steady source of funding or a large source of funding. But in some cases, it's really important that that someone makes a reckoning, makes a.
Well, I understand. Yeah, they need to give back, pay back.
Pay back, even if it's a partial type of thing, or even if it's stretched over many years.
Yeah, I just, one could argue that as it is, they're on the wrong path. And if they have this debt to the county, once they get out, how can they get on the right path?
Yeah, there's going to have to be adequate judgment about balancing restitution with their ability to go forward and in their lives and with their families, and based on the kind of job that they have.
Okay, I want to thank you for joining us. His name is Bob Buster. He is a member of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, running for re-election in November. When we come back, we'll speak with Nathan Miller, a candidate for the Riverside Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back. Welcome back to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm so glad you're with us today. Our guest is Nathan Miller. He is running for the Riverside Community College District. We know him well. He works for an assemblyman in the Inland Empire, and we wish you the very best of luck on your election. Before we start with your positions, I want to get a sense, what does the Riverside Community College District cover?
Well, let me give a little background.
Please.
The community college district used to be at large, so
Right.
it was on par with like a county-sized district. So it was very difficult if you were going to run for a race there. It wasn't given a lot of attention. Now it's been split up into 5 separate districts. The one that I'm drawn into is Corona, Norco, and Eastvale.
But the whole district includes those communities as well as Riverside.
Yeah, all the way out to Moreno Valley, Hemet, kind of down into that area. So
Now,
it's quite a large district.
Now, I understand that you are a graduate of a community college.
Yeah, I started my educational career in higher education in community college at El Camino.
So you have a real sense of community college and how it works and the challenges and the strengths. Why are you committed? I mean, look, we've known each other. You're, how do I say this, a mover and a shaker in political circles, and I say that with no aspersions. What interests you about this office?
Well, I've always been interested in local office. I think local control is absolutely what's missing from the educational argument here. You have Sacramento weighing in on it, stealing resources, the problem you've had with local communities from K through 12 to community college and whatnot.
Right.
They've abdicated that authority.
And let's talk about that, because you know as well as anyone that community colleges have been hammered as a result of the California budget crisis.
Yeah.
Since 2008, California community colleges have seen $809 million in cuts. That's a huge number.
Yeah, I mean, if you would characterize education as the redheaded stepchild of the California state budget, community colleges are the redheaded stepchild of education.
Right.
We get the shaft.
Which is a shame in a lot of ways, because as we know, high school students today are often being steered to community college because CSUs and UCs are getting more expensive, and those classes are being impacted. So your college counselor will say, start a community college. But the problem is that at community colleges, we have seen huge drops in class sections, 24% since 2008.
They're making it increasingly difficult for community colleges to actually fulfill its purpose. And I would say that there are 2. One is you go to community college because you want to prepare yourself for a trade. Real jobs in the real world that are actually being offered. Nursing, graphic design, web design. I would say that those types of jobs that they should be preparing for, a lot of community colleges aren't. I don't particularly understand why they have an abundance of art classes and whatnot. I mean, if you want to specialize in art, you go to an art school. There are other classes that are more valuable that community colleges should be offering that they aren't. And if they're cutting down classes and making it difficult for you actually to fulfill those goals, like trade school, and then the other one being preparing yourself for a 4-year institution. And they should fast track you, right? You want to spend...
Well, I know that the goal is that they want to do that. The 22
I don't think
reforms.
that's their goal. I think their goal is to actually keep students in community college.
Well,
because they want to maximize their student body.
It's funny because in K-12 you get paid per student, and in I guess 13 and 14 there's also a per student allocation.
Per FTEs.
Yeah. Let me ask you though about Prop 30. Now, as you know, Prop 30 is the governor's tax initiative.
Right.
There's also Prop 38, which is Molly Munger's tax initiative. With regard to Prop 30, certain funds are dedicated to community colleges. What's your sense of Proposition 30, which would, by the way, increase sales tax by 1/4 cent for 4 years, increase tax on the wealthy for 7 years?
All right, I tend to be a big picture kind of a guy.
Right.
I think that when you start arguing about the minutia that's inserted into these propositions, I think you're missing the big picture. We're not in a budget deficit because the Sacramento didn't raise taxes fast enough on people. We're in a budget deficit because spending's gotten out of control. You have very special interests up there. That,
well, there's no question that we have a spending problem, let's call it.
So do you want to reward their fiscal irresponsibility?
But revenues are down. I mean, it's undeniable. Revenues are down.
But why is it worse in California than elsewhere? And
well,
why are other states actually adjusting, and some states are doing
Texas
fairly well.
had a big deficit problem.
Texas is the poster child when they put them up against California. Right. But other states outside of Texas.
But let me ask you. Okay, so what the governor has said is that if Prop 30 does not pass, there will be a trigger cut. And that trigger cut, as it would impact community colleges, would be $338 million mid-year.
Why is there a trigger cut for education? Why is education always getting the short end of the stick? I would say that bureaucracy has grown exponentially and unnecessarily.
So, I mean, as I understand it, and you know, whether this is wise or not, what the governor did in June is there were no cuts to education because he was banking on Prop 30 to pass. So if it doesn't pass, we see this massive trigger cut.
Well, if there are systemic hurdles to Sacramento and the governor actually making cuts where I would argue cuts should go to, duplicative processes up in Sacramento, people that get paid to push paper and they don't really have a validation for.
But
those processes need to be changed. Those hurdles need to be addressed by the legislature, but they won't because interests up there control every move.
Here's the challenge. I believe you that we have inefficiencies, that we have duplication. There's no doubt in my mind. Look what happened recently with the Parks Department, where they miraculously found $54 million.
I'm sure it's a tip of the iceberg.
But the problem is we have an issue today, and you know more than me that it's going to take time to uncover all those inefficiencies.
So how does doing what we've done wrong before again solve the problem that we're facing?
And look, I don't need to be on the same page, but what I'm trying to get at, what do we do today?
I put the same argument against the bailout, against the stimulus, rhetorical names for the same thing on the national level. They basically rewarded people that assessed risk irresponsibly. You don't reward people for making those mistakes. So instead of taking the Band-Aid off slowly, sometimes you need to do it.
So what's the answer? If Prop 30 does not pass, then what?
The answer is, from the very beginning, the legislature and the governor should have redirected its focus. Instead of attacking education and saying, we're going to cut education if you don't give me a tax increase, they really should be focusing on the systemic problems that they face up in Sacramento.
But sir, there may be some good news coming out of Sacramento in terms of efficiencies and saving money, and that's pension reform.
Right.
As we speak today, it appears that there's a pension reform plan that will save the state some money. Some say it doesn't go far enough. But in your mind, are we taking positive steps?
I would say pension reform is definitely a positive step in the right direction. I don't want to necessarily give the governor a point on that. It remains to be seen how effective it's going to be. They tend to do these things last minute. They tend to do it.
No.
They tend to do it under the cover of darkness.
No.
And you know, if what you're doing is on the up and up and it's going to benefit California, why don't you want everybody to be aware of that? Why aren't Republicans included in that conversation?
More importantly, how are you doing? This is your first run, I presume, for elective office. You have a wife, you have 3 children, you're incredibly busy. How's it going?
It's going well. I am incredibly busy, but I don't want to be so busy that I can't take the time out to do the right thing when I think the opportunity arises. This district, when it appeared, there was no incumbent in that seat when they drew it. I've always said I wanted to run for local office. I never anticipated running for local office this soon.
Right.
But it was right up my alley. Education is incredibly important to me, so I see an opportunity to change the paradigm of the conversation when I get in there. Obviously, I have a lack of institutional knowledge compared to those folks that have been involved.
You're a Sacramento expert.
I'm talking about the fine details within the boundaries of the community college education, and I will gain that knowledge should I be elected. But I think I bring something to the table that others don't, and that is the ability to truly recognize resources available at one's disposal and then connect those resources together in order to obtain systems efficiency and make things a little better.
His name is Nathan Miller. He is a candidate for the Riverside Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you for joining us. Our guest, Ben Johnson, he's a trustee on the Alvord Unified School Board. What does Alvord cover?
Pretty much, you look at the 90 Riverside as a city, Toutle Mall, La Sierra area, Arlanza, and then a little bit of Corona.
Got it. Okay, I want to speak with you about challenges facing all school districts, and that is the general budget crisis facing our state. On the ballot this fall, we will have two budget initiatives, two tax initiatives that focus upon education funding. Proposition 30, supported by the governor, would increase sales tax by 1/4 cent for 4 years and income tax on the wealthy for 7 years. Prop 38, supported by Molly Munger, would increase taxes on everyone from 0.4% to 2.2% on a sliding scale. What is your sense of these two initiatives, sir?
I think there's, and actually there was going to be three because
Teacher
Association, they were going to have their own and they went with the governor. I think there's positive and negatives to both. Quite frankly, I think that the governor's budget looks at not just K-12 education, but also looks at K through 14.
And UCCSU.
Exactly, and then the Molly Munger's initiative really focuses on local control, that dollars that's supposed to go to schools don't need to go to Sacramento first. They go right to the
Goes in a
school.
lockbox, as Al Gore would
I'm
say.
a little biased. I like that aspect of it, but I think whether it's 30 or 38, when you look at what's happened to our schools over the last several years, schools need the money. We've had, over, I think the last couple of years, we've had over $20 billion in cuts.
Well, let's talk about that, because there is concern that with both initiatives on the ballot, there will be confusion. And when you consider that in June, the voters said no to a cigarette tax, that the voters just are not in the mood to increase taxes on themselves.
I think you're right. I'm concerned, I think, as everybody is, that neither one of the initiatives are going to pass, that you have two things on the ballot that's confusing to people. There's also local initiatives.
And we'll talk about that momentarily.
That are on the ballot. I'm concerned they're going to pass, but I think they need to be put on the ballot. We've got to give the voters knowledge about it now.
Let me say this. If I look at the Inland Empire, I mean, this is an area that tends to vote more red than blue, yet in 2008 it went a little more blue. I think one of the two counties voted for President Obama. And if you look at Prop 30, let's say, if it does well in Riverside County, it's winning statewide.
That's right.
And so I really want to get a sense from you. How do you think this initiative is doing today? Do you believe? It's okay, you got your iPad going. It's all good.
Apologize.
It's modern technology.
And it just went off in the middle.
I love that.
When you look at the polling, and we actually did some polling for the initiative that Alvord is doing to refinance, I think even in tough times, if you educate the electorate, they will support initiatives. I think the biggest concern is if you're going to give them money.
Riverside County, I mean, this is to me, on an initiative like this, it's a bellwether county.
It is, but I do think that when you talk to parents and they see in their classrooms that, let's say 10 years ago, the biggest concern was laptops and technology.
Right. And buzzing iPads.
Exactly. And now do we have enough paper and art supplies and glue sticks for the classrooms? I think if we do a good job in educating people, it's close though. And what I hear from people, it's probably 50-50 right now if the initiative's passed.
Well, it's interesting. Right now, a poll came out recently as we speak today, USC poll. Prop 30 was ahead 55-36. Prop 38 was behind 40-49. But the cigarette tax was up 60%.
That's nice,
and
isn't
it lost 49.7%. So, it's really hard to say. You mentioned your initiative, and that plays right into the calculation. Because what Alvord is asking its voters to do is to allow a school bond measure that passed in 2007, those bonds to be refinanced. And what that refinancing will do is decrease the interest rate, but at the same time, it shortens the window with which the bond will be paid back, and therefore it increases the assessment on property owners by $51 per 100,000.
Sure, it saves money over a long period of time for the voters that did support the bond. The other big concern too is that because of the reduction in housing prices, the bands aren't as profitable as they were 5 years ago. So we've asked the voters basically to refinance, pay a little bit more now, save over the long term, and have a benefit.
But what I'm wondering is, I look at other municipalities, other government entities, Los Angeles County, for example. They have put on their ballot an extension of a sales tax increase dealing with transportation. in November.
Right.
So LA County voters are being asked to increase their sales tax 1 cent. Now in Alvord, it's a similar situation. Not as much money, but was this good timing?
I don't think there was much choice in the timing. We had several sessions about it, and it really came down to we really have no choice. If we don't do it now, then it's going to impact the general fund. We've already cut our general fund probably $5 million over the last couple of years, and to cut even more, obviously that impacts the classroom. We talked to both of our association presidents, and they will tell you that how much more can we take? I had a classified employee talk to me the other day saying we had 5 people 5 years ago, now we're down to 2. So I think the problem is, yes, it's not great timing, but if people can reach into their pockets and pay, on average, it's going to cost probably $10 a month more in taxes to pay that now and save jobs.
Even less, actually. It's a total of $10.
Actually.
I guess it's about $5 more per month. Well, I guess it's per 100,000.
Depending on your house,
so no,
yeah.
You're right.
House.
I'm not a mathematician, clearly.
Neither am I.
Clearly. Let's go back, though, to state public schools generally. We know that with the governor's budget, as it's written in June, that if Prop 30 does not pass, there will be what's called a trigger cut.
That's right.
It's an automatic cut of about $5 billion, and a significant portion of that will be to K-12, K-14. What the governor has said is that if that happens, that the school year could be cut by 3 weeks. Scare tactic? Or
He's holding us hostage.
Yeah.
I think. I mean,
so appropriate or inappropriate?
I think the governor's priorities are out of line. I mean, you look at the high-speed train and other things the governor's done. He says education is a priority. I don't feel it is.
But what's interesting is, in June, there were no cuts to education.
Right.
Because what he said is we're not going to cut, we're going to wait for Prop 30.
Right.
And so, is it a hijacking or is it wishful thinking?
Well, I think he's trying to, for lack of better words, bullying is probably the wrong word, but that's the only thing I can think of. You know, the governor has made choices, and so in my mind, if it doesn't pass, then does he really do the trigger effect? And we cut we spend right now probably about 10% of our educational time in testing. And so do we
there have been discussions about whether we overtest.
Right, so if we cut that even more, and we're already kind of ranked, we had a discussion about RCC and how many students, about 90% of students go to RCC not ready for
Riverside college. Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about funding because the Superintendent of Public Instruction for California evaluates the financial wherewithal of school districts every year. And in Riverside County, 18 out of 23 school districts were deemed in financial jeopardy.
Correct.
I think that term is more scarier than it sounds, but Alvord was in there.
Absolutely.
Jurupa Valley was Jurupa Unified, Riverside Unified. I mean, these are scary times, and does it get even worse without Prop 30?
It does. When you look at, and I'll just give you some brief numbers, but when you look at the average, California already is 47 out of 50 for per student spending.
It is. And
so when you look at Alvord, the average school district in California probably gets about $8,000 ADA per student. We're at about $6,700. We were at $6,700 before the deficit. We'll be down to 52, and if this doesn't pass, we'll be down to $4,700. So I don't know how much more we can take.
What are you saying? Are you talking to your voters about this? I mean, the no side is, and I'm not taking a position, but I mean, I look at Twitter, the no side is burning up Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think we've done a good job of articulating as a district what this means. We talk about it at board meetings, but an effective campaign to the parents, to PTA, and working with both of our associations do we need to do a much better job of that because it's important for everyone.
You got some time, arguably.
We do about 3 months.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. Okay, his name is Ben Johnson. He is a trustee for the Alvord Unified School District. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for watching California Edition.